Hey guys, and welcome to or back to the Pause and Pursuit podcast with your host, Summer Clark. I can't believe I'm saying this, guys, but it is the last podcast episode before EO. How did that happen? Literally, how did that happen? I could not tell you, but it's very exciting. I leave, a week today. I will have already left for Portugal, which is insane. But it's the start of July, basically. Today is the 2nd of July. So happy July. I can't believe it's July either. This year's just flying. But that does mean that it is time for another Q&A here on the podcast. So I have 15 questions that you guys asked me over on Instagram that I'm going to answer for you guys today, including things such as mindset shifts, international nerves, Seesaw Scaries, and a lot more. So stay tuned for that. But before we get into the questions, let me give you a little recap on my week. So the most sort of interesting thing that happened this week is that we had point zero. So as I spoke about in last week's podcast episode, I have had quite a major mindset shift. That's a good one. Mindset shift. If you haven't heard about that, then do listen to last week's episode. I pretty much explain what happened at Axtane and, the kind of conclusion that I came to around my mindset and how me and Arrow are going to approach competing going forward. But point zero was the first show that I actually implemented this. And we achieved 4 out of 4 2-on 2-off seesaws, achieved and reinforced in the ring. By reinforced, I mean, held, praised, stuff like that. I didn't just let him do a 4-on and then released. I did make him go into the full 2-on 2-off position on the end. Like I said I would last week. The first time I had to kind of help coax him into the position, and then all the other times after that, he kind of fell into it by himself after a couple of seconds, so that was positive. And then also 8 out of 8 start lines achieved and reinforced. So again, didn't let him get away with any creeping, reset him until he stood totally still, and then, did some training with it. So ran forward, came back, praised him, stuff like that, held him in that position for longer than I usually would. So those were my only goals for the show, and then the insane results that we got were just a bonus. So we came first in the Team GB International Qualifier jumping under Belmiro Sousa, who is going to be a judge at EO, so that's very exciting. We came first in grade 7 agility with a 5-second seesaw hold. We also had a first in grade 7 jumping, a second in another grade 7 jumping, and then third in 5 to 7 agility with a 9-second seesaw hold, because that was our first run of the entire weekend, which is insane. And then we also had the fastest time with just a pole in a 5 to 7 jumping under Belmiro again. Absolutely love Belmiro's courses and super cool to get to run some of his courses before EO. But overall, all our runs felt amazing. I'm loving our new approach to and mindset around competitions already. And this was, like I said, the first show that we actually implemented them. Prioritizing training no matter the run, taking the pressure off the outcome and having fun with my boy. That is literally what we're doing, the goal. So far, amazing. Couldn't be happier. And then Arrow had his pre-EO physio appointment with Megan from Pace Therapy, Megan Hunt. So big shout out to Megan for keeping him in tip-top condition all throughout the season, not just before big events. But he absolutely loves his sessions with Megan. He has all the cuddles with her, and he's finally relaxed enough now to just lay there and melt into it without me having to hold his collar or keep him still or anything. So that is pretty much the week. Without further ado, let's get straight into the Q&A. So question number 1, and this is quite a lengthy one, but very interesting, so I'll read it out for you guys. So this person says, at a show, my dog's first run is always our best run of the day. Then the runs after this always seem to go downhill, especially if there's a big gap between runs. Do you have any advice for this? I use the same warm-up and cool-down routine for each run, unless our runs are close together, but that rarely happens. We take the dog back to the car between runs, and she settles really well and does sleep. I usually wake her back up with at least 10 to 15 minutes for a wee and warm-up before we cue again. Would love another opinion on what we can do to improve. So this is very interesting. I've never experienced this myself. All my dogs have pretty much, had the same approach to agility throughout the runs, throughout the day. But some things to try, and again, I don't have a guaranteed way of fixing this, but some things to try, I would say try mixing up her reward. So potentially use different forms of reward in all the different runs throughout the day. Find the one that she likes the most. And even if she likes all of them equally, just that sort of keeping it different, keeping her on her toes kind of thing. Try that. I'd also try not queuing. You say you wake her up with at least 10 to 15 minutes for a wee and warm up before we queue again. So actually, number one, try waking her up longer than 10 to 15 minutes. Try half an hour, try 45 minutes, try an hour. Kind of try different times that you wake her up before she runs, because it might be that 10 or 15 minutes just isn't enough for her to fully wake up. And then try not queuing. So just try, I know it can be tricky, especially if you don't have a groom. If you do have a groom, use them to sort of queue for you, and you keep her out of the queue until last minute and then go and take her to the ring and run straight away. Or if you're on your own, either go very first in the class or very last, so you don't have to queue. Maybe the queuing just gets old for her more than the running. And then the last point that I'd try is have her out more between runs. So maybe don't take her straight back to the car between runs and let her go to sleep for that whole time. Maybe try having her out and about a bit more, maybe do some training around the rings with her. Just have her sort of, just try the not being in the car between runs kind of vibe, at least a little bit more than you're doing now. So those are the 3 things that I would give a go. Let me know how you get on if you try any of those. Question 2, how to keep positive when a show has poor quality kit and all of the courses are tight turns, minimum distances and a very old school. We had to go for qualifiers, but the whole weekend felt like I had to battle to keep my dog safe. It was so demoralising. So first of all, you get to pick and choose your shows. On the schedule before you enter a show, it does tell you what kind of equipment will be used at that show. And then you also get to see the judges that are going to be judging. I know, if you don't really know judges very well at this stage, you're not sure maybe what kind of courses they produce. But you do get all that information, kind of there before you enter. And you say very old school, again, that could be very judge dependent. But overall, this is out of your control. What's in your control is whether you enter it or not from the information that you're given before you enter it. But other than that, the kit, the judges, the courses, the distances, the style of courses, that's all out of your control. So if you still want to go to these kinds of shows, then accept it for what it is. And remember that we all have good and bad weekends. So this is probably just one of your bad weekends. Like, you'll probably go to your next show next week or in 2 weeks, and it'll be a great show with great judges. I say great judges, judges that set courses that you enjoy. It's on equipment that you like to run on, and the courses are just your kind of vibe that you enjoy. And that's the up and down of agility. We get a bit of both. Also, you say you had to go for qualifiers. I'd say had to is a very strong phrase. You don't have to go to any shows, do you, really? Obviously, the qualifiers means a lot to you, but I'm sure that particular show, or what you're referring to in this question, isn't the only qualifier you have that you need to go to throughout the year. There's plenty of qualifiers for things throughout the year. Again, I don't have any more information as far as that goes, but you didn't have to go. And if a course is unsafe, then don't run it, because qualifiers aren't worth your dog's safety. And again, big emphasis on there's a difference between, a bit awkward courses and then unsafe courses. So if you're referring to just awkward courses, then you've just got to accept it and make that decision. But if they're actually unsafe, like genuinely physically unsafe, and you feel like you can barely keep your dog safe running them, then don't run them. Like, they're not worth it, if that makes sense. Question number 3, running or stop dog walk? If running, how did you train it? So I trained Arrow to do a running dog walk, as everyone's probably seen. Ethel always had stops, but I didn't even know running was a thing when I taught her how to do contacts. But yeah, Arrow does have a running dog walk, and I would always recommend teaching running contacts now, because Not only is it faster, and agility is super fast these days, and it's only getting faster and more competitive. So if you want to be competitive, then in my opinion, I think you need a running dog walk, really. I mean, ideally both. Some people have both, and huge respect. I've never taught both. I think that would overwhelm Arrow, but the thought of having both with a future dog is something that I would love to do, because then, if you've got a really, really tricky exit, tight turn, or if you get really behind and there's a backside or something after the dog walk, then, you can use it, especially if it's in a team event or a one round of champ or singles or something where you need a clear and really want to, avoid an E. That's helpful. But I used the map method to teach Arrow his running dog walk. I'm not going to go into detail about the exact steps I took to train Arrow a running dog walk using the map method, because I do have an online running dog walk course that takes you through the entire process pretty much from the very start to the amazing running dog walk Arrow has now. So if you're interested in that, please do just send me a message. But yeah, definitely running. Question 4, can you explain a little more about your change in approach to start lines and seesaws in comps now, please? Yeah, so basically I've realised that the only way to ensure that I'm giving Arrow consistent physical, verbal and emotional cues at every seesaw in competition is to fix my mindset by taking the chance of winning away from myself before I enter the ring. So, it's not just saying the cue and having the piece of equipment in front of the dog, that lets them know what to do on it. And especially Arrow, they pick up so much on us, so much. So if I'm doing something slightly different with my physical cues, my arms might be a bit different. I might be a little bit more tense when I feel like it's important. Say if it's in champ, maybe my voice is higher pitched and more panicky because it means more to me. Maybe he can sense I'm more nervous, so my emotional cues are different, and that almost makes it a different, scenario in completely for them. So from now on, I'll be redoing or holding him in the 2 on 2 off position on every seesaw. So redoing it if he doesn't stop in the 2 on 2 off position until I say okay, or if he does it, then holding him and reinforcing him in that position, including in champ, qualifiers and finals, except for at EO, because obviously we just don't have enough time to fix anything between now and the event. I've been chasing champ and qualifiers for months now, and it hasn't done us any good. There's always that little bit of hope on the start line that tempts me to carry on despite less than perfect criteria, and training it in normal runs clearly isn't enough in the long run because of all the struggles I've had. So I'm also now addressing his start line issue by taking more time to train it in every run. So on the start line, I'm just taking my time, making sure, to correct any creeping until he stands still as I walk away. And then, like I said, reinforcing that, running back to him, leading out again, praising, stuff like that. So that is pretty much how I'm approaching start lines and seesaws now. Whereas before, I was only training seesaws or redoing seesaws or holding seesaws in quote unquote normal runs, not in quote unquote, again, important runs like champ, qualifiers and finals. So I'll be doing that differently now. I was also basically letting him off with 4 on before, when his criteria is actually 2 on 2 off, because before I was like, what's good enough? But no, now it needs to be 2 on 2 off. That is the behaviour. And then start lines, I was kind of just letting him creep and then releasing him wherever he landed before. Whereas now I'm like, no, you're not doing that. You're going back, and we are, we're working on it in each run until he gets it right before we even start the run. So that is pretty much my change of approach. And it's just going into runs, not thinking that it's to win or to get a result. I go in with the mindset, the only things that I want to get out of this run is, training the seesaw and the start line. If I can do that, then it's been a successful run no matter what else happens. And I'm just running so much better. Arrow's running so much better, and I'm just enjoying it so much more. Question 5. My spaniel is scared of the seesaw and I don't really know how to fix it. So first thing I'd do is revisit foundation exercises. So things like bang games, for example, just really getting them used to the movement of the seesaw, because it can be scary. It does make a noise. It's a moving thing. So yeah, lots and lots of bang games, again, where you prop one side of the seesaw up with a wing so that there's just a little bit at the bottom where they can jump on and off and it bangs a tiny bit without being the entire movement. And then I'd really consider taking them out of competition for a while you work on them. If your dog's scared of them, let's not make them do them in competition quite yet. Let's really work on that confidence away from a competition before bringing them back into competition, because a show environment is so much different for them. It's so much more stressful anyway. And if they've already got a fear, then you are just risking making that worse. And then lastly, ensure that your criteria is obvious and consistent. So just stick to your criteria every time you do the seesaw. Often our dogs can be nervous on a piece of or act nervous or unsure on a piece of equipment, literally because they just are uncertain and they don't know really what's being asked of them. So make sure your criteria is obvious, your cue for that criteria is obvious, and you stick to that every single time your dog sees the piece of equipment. So those are some things that I would try. Question 6, how do you go about creating a training plan for your dog's weak areas and prioritize them? So obviously you want to start by listing your dog's weaknesses, things, areas that you want to work on and improve. Then besides that, you can list the relevant exercises that will help to improve them. So for example, if your dog's weaknesses are threadle wraps, then a relevant exercise to improve threadle wraps is a nose touch into a jump. So again, going back to the foundation behaviours, and then building on to just, a wrap round a single wing into a threadle wrap straight to a reward at the wing. And then, if a weakness is a seesaw, relevant exercises would be, nose target, bang game, stuff like that. And then once you've got that, schedule your week to incorporate training sessions that revolve around these exercises. So make sure that you are spreading out your training sessions, keeping them short and sweet, but simple and effective, not doing loads of things that you don't need to be doing, just making each, training session count. Even when it's short, you can still get a lot out of it if you pretty much know what you're doing before you go into the session, so you're not going to waste any time. And be realistic, know how much time you can dedicate to training each day, or maybe 3 times a week or 10 minutes a day, or again, it depends on your lifestyle, on your work schedule, your life. But yeah, just scheduling those relevant training sessions into your week, working it around your schedule, and then ticking them off as you go and making sure you get it done. Because if you don't plan, then, you have nothing to, like I said, check off to hold yourself accountable. You have no way to monitor, if you're getting your sessions in. And if you're not getting your sessions in, you can't complain that you're not making any progress. Question 7, have you noticed a difference in Arrow's performance since you started taking him to physio? So Arrow has always seen a physio every month. His physio almost always finds some tightness or a sore spot that developed since his last appointment, because he is doing so much agility and he is such an active dog. So monthly appointments ensure that this doesn't build up and cause injury. So this tightness and sore spots need treating and releasing and sorting regularly to make sure that they don't build up. Not only to prevent injury, but also just so that he's not uncomfortable in his day-to-day life, because how it feels to have a tightness, a sore spot. It's horrible, even just moving normally without doing sport hurts and is uncomfortable. So, I think I haven't, obviously, because Arrow's always seen a physio every month, I have nothing to compare it to. It's not like he didn't have physio and then suddenly started going and his performance has improved. I've just always done it. I think prevention's better than cure. So that's why I take him to physio, more to prevent and maintain than cure something, because, there isn't anything to cure, touch wood. It's just maintaining him to keep him in tip-top condition. Question 8, how did you get Arrow to tolerate wearing a muzzle for Portugal? Tolerate? Did I say that right? Yeah. Oh my God, I'm having a moment. How did you get Arrow to tolerate wearing a muzzle for Portugal? My dog can't stand it. So you want to start off with really short sessions and high reinforcement. So lots of treats and praise. Start off with them just having the muzzle, placing the muzzle on their nose for a second, reward, then 2 seconds, reward, and then gradually build up to clipping it for 1 second, reward, clipping it for 2 seconds, and then gradually build that up until, you maybe clip it on, ask for a behaviour, clip it off and reward and stuff like that. And then a sequence of behaviours, and then gradually build up to walking around with the muzzle on. So start, just a few paces, then take it off and reward, then up the garden, then reward, then up the garden and back, down the garden and then reward, until you can do like maybe a 10-minute walk with it on, stuff like that. So that is how I've done it with Arrow. Again, just as with any aspect of dog training, it's all about building it up gradually, and keeping sessions short, basically. Question 9. What is Arrow going to eat while abroad? My raw-fed dog is coming on holiday with us and I'm not sure what to do. So Arrow will be eating Eden semi-moist because he is used to having this as treats. So I know it's not going to upset his stomach because he's already used to having it. He already has it in his day-to-day life as treats, in the Manners Minder, stuff like that. Some people do get freeze-dried raw. Apparently, it's meant to be a closer resemblance to actual raw food. But like I said, I've always just used Eden semi-moist because it's something Arrow already is used to. I like the ingredients. I think it's a healthy food, and yeah, I've always done that. I do that not just for going abroad, because obviously I haven't taken Arrow abroad before now, but I also do it when we're camping at shows, so KCI and stuff, and his stomach's fine on it. Kibble bloats him up. I found that out quite some years ago. He does have quite a sensitive stomach. I think it may be a spaniel thing, to be honest, but the Eden semi-moist never bothers his stomach, so because he's already used to that, I will be taking fat instead of his raw. And then, yeah. Question 10. Are you nervous about EO? And if so, how are you going to prepare mentally? So at the moment, no. It's still, I know this sounds stupid, but it's still, the competition's too far away for me to be nervous. I don't get nervous this far in advance. But when I'm there, I'm going to do the usual. I'm going to stick to my usual pre-run routine to make sure that I get myself in the mental zone. I get Arrow in the mental zone. And then I'm just going to remember that we are a young partnership and our main goal is to gain experience for future years. We have literally been told that by the management team, us four, the medium team. That is why we are on the team. We are, gaining that experience for future years. And like Greg Derrick said in the podcast episode I did with him quite a while ago now, if you want to go listen to that, you cannot know what an event is like until you actually go and do it. Okay, you have to go and do it, and then for future years. And it's the only way you can't gain that kind of knowledge and experience about something until you're actually there doing the thing. So just remembering, again, it's a bit like with the Seesaw and the start line I was on about earlier. It's just going in with the goal is to gain experience, and then that goal's achieved no matter what happens. Oh, sorry, I'm tired. Oh. The EO prep is getting to me. But yeah, and I'm just going to enjoy it. I'm just going to enjoy it. I've got so many years ahead of me to be on GB. And yeah, this is an incredible opportunity that I've been given, and I'm just going to make the most of it. Question 11. My friend is worried about how the competitive nature of the YKC at Crufts will affect her children. This is their first proper season, so she wants them to have a really friendly time. Is the YKC a lot more friendly than the adult world? So I would highly recommend competing in YKC classes at Crufts. Of course, there will always be a handful of unpleasant people in any aspect of competition, but in general, the YKC is the perfect way to eventually ease into the adult world, in my opinion. I've been competing in the YKC at Crufts since 2017. So what's that, 17? 3, 4, 5. 8 years. That's 8 years I've been competing in the YKC at Crufts, which is insane, actually, now when I think about it. But yeah, I've only ever had positive experiences. I've got to say, again, no one's specific, but the parents in the YKC are worse, than the children. For the child, it's such a good environment. You make friends, you experience sort of that competitive environment without it being totally overwhelming. I think it's the perfect way, to get into it without going straight in at the deep end, if that makes sense. And there are 2 opportunities to get in the main ring in the YKC. But again, I think half of it is who you're surrounded by and who you're competing with. I think being surrounded by, other young people with their dogs and stuff is way less intimidating for children and young people than, say, going in with sort of older individuals that have way more experience in the sport and stuff. So yeah, I would highly recommend competing in YKC classes at Crufts. There's going to be competitive nature in whatever sport you do, not just the YKC, just agility in general. Like, if you're going to compete in a sport, there's always going to be a competitive aspect. And to be honest, it sounds harsh, but they've just got to get used to that. And I think the YKC is the perfect way to start doing that. Someone says, I saw a post on Agility Europe about how agility events shouldn't be allowed to be held in hot countries. Are you worried about the heat in Portugal? So yeah, it is a concern for everyone. It's going to be in the 40s, I think. But, you know, we will all be taking every possible measure to keep ourselves and dogs cool while we're out there. Again, like I said earlier in a question, where the event is held is totally out of our control. Everyone knew where it would be held before entering the tryout process. I know quite a few people, including people from other countries, didn't even try out because they knew it was going to be in Portugal and that it was going to be so hot and maybe them or their dogs don't cope in the heat, so they just didn't enter it. So again, it was our choice to enter it to potentially compete in Portugal, which everyone knows is a hot country. And yeah, you can't change where the event is held, but you can change if you try out for it or not. So we did try out for it. So, you know, I'm not going to be like, it shouldn't be held in Portugal. I knew it was going to be held in Portugal and still tried it out. So, you know, we're going to go over there knowing what to expect and, you know, keep ourselves and our dogs cool with the measures that we've got put in place to do so. Yeah. And a few years ago at KCI, I know it's not quite the same kind of heat, but it was 40 degrees at KCI and we competed. We camped in a bloody tent over the 4 days and we coped and we kept cool. And, you know, everyone will be just doing their best to keep themselves and their dogs cool. Obviously, everyone's dog safety is the top priority. And yeah, so I can't say I'm worried about it, but I know it's going to be, I'm going to have to, you know, put in these procedures and the work to keep us safe and cool, which is more than doable. 13, do you not find that taking the chance of winning away from yourself takes away your motivation to train and compete? So I did have a bit of this to start with because I am, as I've said before, a naturally very competitive person. But all in all, I think it's literally the best thing that I've done for myself, and I've only actually been doing it for one competition. It's essentially allowed me to actually enjoy the sport and the process of training again. And the motivation still exists because I'm motivated to achieve my long-term goals by making these short-term sacrifices. So by sacrificing the wins now, I'm on the path and making progress toward my long-term goals. You know, all the goals that I have with Arrow and, you know, even future dogs, but mainly with Arrow, because the only way to achieve those goals, and my main goal isn't even a specific competition or result at the moment. It's just, you know, go into each run and not be, you know, worried about a seesaw or a start line, you know, just have a solid base, if that makes sense, and really get that back. And the only way to achieve that is by doing what I'm doing now and taking that chance of winning away from myself mentally so that I can make sure I'm focusing on that and really doing that properly, you know, not just kidding myself saying that I'm going to do it and that the win doesn't matter when deep down it does, you know, actually physically thinking that now and believing that, because the chance of winning isn't even there. So I almost don't have a choice, if that makes sense. But no, the motivation is absolutely still there. And I was unsure that it would be myself, to be honest. So this question makes total sense. But no, it's so much more fun. You know, just running Arrow is so much more fun without that pressure. And the process of, you know, training and, you know, really dialing in on these aspects. So the seesaw and the start line is really exciting because, you know, when you do something like I'm doing, the progress will come because you're being consistent, and the motivation is there because, you know, I'm motivated to see progress like we all are. And I know that progress will come because I'm making these sacrifices and I'm doing these things. So it's actually brought my motivation up weirdly because it was so demoralising going into champ and qualifiers and stuff and wanting the win and chasing things and not getting it because of the seesaw and the start line. So, you know, I actually had less motivation when, you know, I was still, you know, had the chance of winning in my head, if that makes sense. So, what is the current situation with your agility training business? Great question. I will be updating you all on this properly when I get back from EO. But just for now, just know that exciting things are happening. Big things are coming. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say on it for now. But yeah, developments are happening and behind the scenes things have been going on, and I'm super, super excited. So stay tuned for that when I get back from Portugal at the end of the month. Last question. My dog barely drinks anything at shows. Is this normal? So to be honest, Arrow doesn't either. Even in the house, he's not a big drinker, or Ethel. He drinks after a run if it's warm or if he's done multiple runs back to back, for example. But yeah, he's not a huge drinker, but you can buy products to add to your dog's water. So Better Dog, for example. Dalton Meredith, the founder of Better Dog, speaks a bit about this product in the podcast episode I did with him a few months ago. If you want to check that out for more information, also you could check them out on the website. Not sponsored, by the way. I just know that it exists and it's everywhere. But yeah, I think it's quite normal. Like I said, Arrow really isn't a big drinker. He'll drink when he needs to, but sometimes he'll go half the day without drinking. Probably not ideal. But yeah, you know, if he needs a drink, he will have a drink. And he's always got water. He's always got water there in the van in his crate to have when he wants it. So as long as your dog has the option to drink when they want it, then there's not much else you can do. Except, you know, buy some products to add to their water. I know some people give goat's milk as well. Just adds a bit of flavour and, you know, the dogs just enjoy drinking a bit more, because I suppose it's a bit more like food then, isn't it, if it has taste. But that is all of the questions this month, guys. A bit shorter than my normal Q&As, I think. But honestly, I want to say I'm, like, not all there, like, mentally. I'm just thinking about, I've got so much on at the moment, so much to sort out for EO still. But yeah, I still wanted to get an episode out, a monthly Q&A out, but I kept my answers a little bit shorter, a little bit more simple, but I hope you still got lots from them. If you have any more questions that you want to ask me, that you think about outside of these Q&A episodes, then please just do send me a DM. I would be more than happy to answer them privately, or if you have any questions or want any, you know, expansions on any of the points I've made today, then again, just DM me. Give me a follow on all of the social media platforms at Pause in Pursuit or Summer Clark. I know most of you already are. And make sure you're following the podcast because I've got lots of exciting episodes coming after I get back from EO, including a guest episode with Kat, the Running Contact's absolute queen. So that will be super fun. You guys have already asked questions for her, so stay tuned for that. If you're feeling generous, please do leave the podcast a 5-star rating and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcast. That would mean the world to me. And before I let you guys go, what do I have coming up in the next week? Honestly, tomorrow is my birthday, so I'll be celebrating that. I am the big old age of 24, which is terrifying, because that means I'm nearly 25, which means I'm nearly 30, which is scary and makes me physically ill to think about. But anyway, gonna have a good day, going out for sushi, so that'll be fun. And then literally the rest of the week is just going to be getting ready to leave for EO and kind of doing as much resting as I can, resting and recovering for me and Arrow. Not doing a lot, except just getting those final bits prepared for our trip that we are literally going on a week today. We will be on the road, which is insane. I think we might actually just be getting on the ferry or about to get... Yeah, I think we'll be on the ferry by now, heading over to Santander. And then we've got the Spanish show, obviously, next weekend. Not this weekend, next weekend. And then it'll be EO. So what the helly? How did this happen? But yeah, so excited. And the next episode will be a big EO catch-up, and that will drop on the 30th of July. So 3 Wednesdays off now. And then there will be another podcast in your ears all about my experience of EO and travelling abroad with Arrow. And I can't wait to tell you guys all about it, even though it hasn't happened yet. But yeah, if you miss me, if you miss hearing my very irritating voice for the next month or so before I come back while I'm away, please just go and binge all of the previous episodes. There's so many episodes up, and I bet you any money you haven't listened to all of them. If you have, send me a DM and tell me you've listened to every single podcast episode, because that's incredible and I love you. Thank you for the support. But yeah, there's loads and loads of episodes from previous seasons and stuff. So please do go listen to all of those if you haven't already. And I will talk to you guys when I get back from EO. What the hell? But yeah, make sure you follow me on social media because then you can see live updates while I'm away as well. And you don't have to wait all that time for updates. But yeah, I'll see you over on my socials, guys. And I will speak to you on the 30th of July. Bye, guys.